Good evening. What's new? Just talking to a customer today, a number of people from the IT and Finance subcommittee of the board of an organisation. They've been being presented with a number of IT quotes the organisation had received. And there was something in their gut feel that said that they weren't too sure whether these were appropriate or not, and asked me to have a bit of a look. The issue with this wasn't so much the quotes themselves as there was no context for them. So there's a certain amount of work that was being quoted to be done, but there was no link and no visibility of what needed to be done to achieve the company goals. So the IT people, doing the best efforts to fill in the gaps that they had tried to identify how to get a like-for-like replacement of their current aged and broken systems with some new systems with some up-to-date technology. Not such a bad thing from that point of view. But the question is, what needed to be spent for the organisation to fix the problems, and the very real problems that that organisation had and knew it needed to face? And in fact, did this investment that was being suggested to them have any contribution to make? Did it make any contribution to where they were trying to get? Unfortunately, those questions weren't being asked. As it turns out, the technology itself wasn't too bad, although there were one or two fairly significant parts, mostly to do with things like mobility and access to core systems for partner organisation and outsourced organisations that hadn't been picked up. And while these are not technically impossible, they are certainly much easier to implement if designed in from the ground up. Problem number one. Problem number two, previously mentioned, no overall idea of cost. Problem number three was an interesting and critical one. Because there is no overall vision as to where they're going and what they're trying to do in technology, they're just trying to solve problems on the fly. They'd asked technology companies for their recommendations, which were based on some health checks and reviews that they had done, all trying to give it some air of knowledge and understanding. But another critical thing that they'd failed to consider was what was the resourcing that was going to be required for this technology and indeed for the organisation moving forward. The technology they'd chosen was more up-to-date and it was more technically complex. They did not currently have staff who had the capabilities of running these technologies, and therefore they were considering that they needed to hire someone. But did this role have any place, and was it a good use of what everybody has, limited funds, in the longer term? So the right answer in terms of the broader spectrum of technical improvements this organisation clearly needs to make, and there was strong agreement after merely an hour discussion that this organisation needed to make, there were critical success factors in that broader plan for some skills around change, around technology introduction into an organisation, around people change, and indeed process alignment. And this technical skill wasn't actually something they needed. What they needed to be doing, in fact, was to get this technical skill externally. You could call it outsourcing, but more importantly at this stage, and before you have actually purchased the infrastructure, it is actually setting a relationship and finding a service provider partner who is able to provide the technical functionality with the service functionality as a fully managed, fully inclusive service. First of all, for the strategic resourcing of the organisation, but importantly and critically, before you've bought the equipment. Rather than putting you in the position where you are buying some equipment to achieve an outcome and then trying to find somebody to service it, you're finding somebody and saying, this is the requirement that we have. Can you implement, realise and maintain this at a given price over an extended term? And indeed, it's likely that the people who they had been talking to, who, while quite proficient on implementing their technology, just simply don't have the services that this company actually needs. So from a board perspective, they've been given a quote. Technically, not necessarily anything wrong with it. But in terms of the fit to the organisation, the strategy and where this company should be, wrong. Yeah, something to think about.